So, Rebecca, we're going to take the conversation in a little bit of a different direction, and I'm actually really excited about it. It's the power of quitting or knowing when to quit, which is an interesting one because a lot of people know when to start, and they're super excited about starting things. But we're going to dig a little bit into your career about the power of quitting. And so, this welcome, my friend. And why don't we tee it up? What was your first experience in corporate America, coming at a crossroads where you decided to walk away from something, and why?
Thank you, Ruben. So this is a long time ago. I've worked in the tech industry for 25 plus years. And so you go back to 0 to 8, I worked at one large company. And since then I've worked at over a dozen companies, as you can imagine. And when I worked those 8 years at this large company, each year was a year of growth, a personal growth, professional growth year. And at some point it came to, I had a good career in product management. I could have just continued along in that place. And, I look at some of the folks who have been my peers back then and where they are now. And they've all done different things since then. Some have stuck to that same career and have, gone where they are. For me personally, to your question, what kind of consideration around quitting? I don't think I could have given much credit to myself about that decision to quit back then, as much as I would try to give myself that credit now, many years later, almost 3 times more. Time has passed since that. And it was probably one of the best decisions I could have made as I look back. One of the best.
Give us some context, though. Like in the sense, what role did you have in the organization?
So
did you go ahead?
I was a product manager back then.
Okay, and you were experiencing success, right? Is that correct? You had a good path in front of you, stable company, big company. What I'm hearing is there weren't many external reasons to quit, right? I mean, you had a pretty clear path as to a series of successes.
Yes, it's for sure. There was a lot of stability, and what I think that my main motivation was the stability. The very thing that makes you feel contented could also be the one that stops you from growing. If you're not growing, then it's too stable. Then it's a very uncomfortable situation. So each year as I was learning and growing, and at some point now I'm a good product manager, what's next becomes the question, like, where is the personal growth? So I think we have to constantly ask ourselves this question: are you growing? And the thing is, in a lot of places that we are at, some of those growth constraints might be environmental. Some of them could be your own situation. Some are irreversible also. There's not much you can do about it, and the only way that you can recreate or restart anything is to just quit. You repeat the same thing and all you get is insanity. I think it's attributed to Einstein. So
how did you know this was building within you? Like, how did that physically show up? Did you have less interest in the job, less attention to detail, less excited? What was building inside of you that was leading to this crossroad moment?
I think it's a Peter Principle moment. You're getting promoted to the highest level of your competence, and after that, what do you do? So one of the things that can happen is either your boss quits so you can move up and learn some new, or you can get into something else laterally, a new career or a new set of role functions, skills that you can develop. But not every place affords that chance in the time that you may want, and you're just waiting. It may not serve you good then. And so you really need to dare to have the courage to quit. It doesn't matter what's going to happen next, but if you come to your mind that you're not growing at the pace at which you want to grow, and you don't want the stability, then quitting is the perfect answer and it's got to be celebrated. Is if you look at the macro conditions currently, it's a dynamic labor market. Lots of opportunities are available as such, but also there's this wave of great resignation where people are burned out. People have all kinds of stress from the pandemic and post-pandemic related stuff, and a general reevaluation of the workplace. Right there, what is the ideal workplace that people want to create? Is it a place of collaboration? Is it a place of purpose, meaning, or is it a place of just selling ads? So people want to be connected with the workplace, connected with their colleagues, and if it doesn't answer those questions, then maybe find something that's more satisfying.
I mean, two questions for you. You're at this big company. What did your boss say when you told your boss you're quitting? I mean, did you have another job lined up? Or
this was a long time ago. Obviously, when if you've done well, most places would like to retain you, and that was the same case. People will now dangle you additional, compensation or other things. And this goes back a long time. I don't recall the whole details about it, but I do remember some conversations in that spirit, and that's usually not a great idea, both from the employer perspective and the employee's perspective.
Because trying to throw incentives to stay. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, because the question here you have to ask is, why weren't you throwing these things before? It's a very simple question. Like, so if I'm going to quit today, then you're going to give me this. And so it's not a very healthy situation. It's better for people to make their own free will guided decisions and then leave. And if you really want to retain someone, then you should do the work that is needed to keep them engaged. Forget about retention, keep the engagement. And so, and the engagement happens if the employer or the workplace is genuinely interested in growing, not just the business, but also the humans that are growing that business. And it's not often you find places that can do that. And it's not a requirement either, right? You cannot look at, we have to be practical about it also, does every workplace afford a long time span of unlimited growth to every individual? It's unrealistic. The business grows in the direction that it needs to grow, and we all get into that business train and be part of that journey for that period of time, and be flexible and open to also get off the next station. It's like a train that's moving in its track, and the business is constrained also, to be fair. And so what we have to look at is, which train do you want to get on, to what distance, and when do you want to get off the...
Yeah, I like that. So it's not really a codependent relationship. It's a healthy relationship. Look, we're here for a certain amount of time together. Let's treat each other with respect. Let's try to create as much as we can, a really healthy environment, but it's not meant for do or die, right? And so there's a little bit of that. Okay, I get what you're saying. Did you discover some things about yourself after you quit? I mean, did you discover like additional courage, or there was an awareness of, wow, I'm stronger than I thought I was? So this big leap of faith opened up to more possibility.
Absolutely. So in the first few years, I just enjoyed the process of quitting itself, believe it or not. I had about 4 jobs.
Hashtag said no one, but I love it. I love this. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
in the next 2-3 years, I think, I was able to rotate out 6 months, 9 months, a year. And I had a good story each time, of course, as to why I left, why I'm looking for the new one. Because most people look at my resume and like, okay, this guy's been around for 8 years, so there must be some loyalty. And so I'm going to hire him. Turns out he's around here only 6 months, a year. And it can be not optimal for the employer for having spent the time and cost and resources in hiring this person, recruiting this person, training this person. And just when, you're at a point of contributing, after 100 days or so, if you say, well, I want to leave, not a good fit, what happens? And so that's not optimal. I understand that. And you shouldn't be doing that. I don't encourage people to do that. But also, it was so early in my career that I guess it was all right now in hindsight.
Yeah.
Right. So I did, looking back, it was scary for sure. Like, hey, you're going to make a mess of your resume is often the question. If you quit, what does your resume look? And I think I want to encourage from my own experience that don't worry about the resume. The resume is just, it's just a document. It isn't as important as the work we do, the relationships we build. And if you contributed, if you had meaningful contribution in these places, no matter how long that is, I think that in itself, the journey is more important than whether you got off the next station or you stayed for, over for 3 stations and then got off the train after.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you saying is you still cared about making impact, right? Yes. Even though you were there for 6 to 9 months or whatnot, and I love your honesty. This is awesome. You were there for 6 to 9 months. You still left a legacy. You still had impact, right? You still helped the organization elevate its game. Is that a fair statement?
That is, I believe that's accurate. If you had been there longer, no doubt the contribution would have been much higher. But also you have to assess yourself. To your question earlier on about like what kind of self-reflection did you do about it? Well, my reflection was that all individuals are different, right? We all have our there are basic human needs, but also there's individual needs. Each person is different. And so some people might like stability. Some people might like a dynamic workplace. Some people might like a different kind of work arrangement. So one of the things I tried was doing consulting at that time, where it allowed me the opportunity to work with multiple, companies and have a flexible work style where I'm not having to, spend all my time in one place and not have the variety in my life to solve problems. Like I look at myself mostly as a problem solver, and I want to be thrown difficult problems to solve, whether it's intense focus on one problem or variety of problems. Ultimately, my strength is in problem solving. I like to believe that. And so where can I best contribute is an important thing. And then where is the people that you're serving, where are their needs? And there could be a Venn diagram around this. Sometimes it's full-time employment. Sometimes it's a consulting engagement. Sometimes it's some other flexibility that you have. And so figuring this out and also having enough flexibility to like, one of these places is really good for you. Turned out that happened to be the case some years ago. And I joined them full-time. And turns out they had a very successful outcome. And I was part of that, and that was great. And so, now I'm back in consulting again in a similar kind of spirit, looking at different opportunities, but, just dipping my toe in and seeing how it goes. So the reflection.
So what I'm hearing you say is like, you're not opposed to a long-term relationship, right? I mean, you're not relationship shy, but you've mixed and dabbled. Interesting on the quitting side though, because it seems like you quit a number of opportunities early in your career from a success perspective. You came in, you had impact, you solved big problems. What about, have you ever had an opportunity where you picked a problem? I like how you phrase that. You're a man who goes looking for problems, right? I mean, you're looking for problems to solve. But have you ever ended up in a situation where, hey, there was a problem that you couldn't solve, or you started thinking that maybe I'm not the right person to solve this problem, and you quit because of that? Because that's a different level of quitting, right? That takes some serious introspection, maybe even some humility to say, hey.
100%. I give you, I think I had more than my fair share of those also. It's not just once. I've had, maybe 3, maybe 4 times those apply to, where I came to the realization that it's not a good fit because I am probably not the right person here to solve this kind of problem. 100%. And the sooner you realize it, the better. Sometimes it just takes time. It could be 6 months, 9 months. So a couple of those, shorter term employment engagements, it's a hybrid of employment and, in my mind, a consulting engagement, is that where you realize that the structure is in place, whether it is management, whether it's, the product market fit in an early stage startup, or, the other things that are in place, you absolutely come to that realization that there are more things outside of your control. It's very humbling, actually, to like, okay, it's time to say goodbye, rather than stay there and erode the goodwill because you're trying to do something that doesn't produce the results, and you're going against the grain of where that train is only going to go in that direction and that track to those stations, and you're trying to go somewhere else. Maybe you should hop off the train, find the right train to go to the place that you want to go.
No, I love that. Have you, when we talk about the topic of quitting, it's really interesting. As a very, you've always struck me as a very self-aware and introspective leader, and rigorously honest with yourself and with others. Have there been times when you've looked at the corporate landscape in which you're serving and saying, you know what, it's time for me to quit because I'm holding other people back? Like hey, I've built the team, they're ready to take over. I'm a problem solver. My time here is over, and I want to create space and opportunity for others to advance. Has that ever crossed your path or be part of your thinking?
Well, since we are in the space of like being brutally honest here, I've even been let go once in situation where, that was the next best thing to do. And so you have to humbly accept that situation because I'm not the right fit for it. Company's perspective, not just my own reflection, but even the company's own reflection is there. And so I think, yes, you're right. Yeah, you have to play to your strengths. Obviously you're seeing a lot of books, but I want to mention that one of the books that I recently read by Carey Nieuwhof is this book called At Your Best. And that book summarized some things that I've held myself and practiced, and a whole lot I learned through that book. So there were some elements that, like the calendaring portion, I diligently practiced in it. But then there were so many nuggets and meta in that book. And I thought, wow, what a nice, crisp way of putting things together. And the thesis of the book is At Your Best is really focusing on what you are best at. We cannot be best at everything. Simply not possible, right? And so, but it takes time to know what you're best at. It also takes time to do multiple things to get to the best part, right? You can't wake up, you're 2 years or 3 years or 6 years into the workforce and say, I'm best at X, Y, Z. That's, you just have to give time to gain the experience and have, many at-bats. One of my bosses used to say back in the day, you need enough at-bats to be able to get that successful outcome.
Yeah.
And so
keep swinging for it. I know. I love that. I mean, final question for you, Prabhakar, is 2 or 3 pieces of advice for when it's time to quit, and maybe 2 or 3 pieces of advice when it's not time to quit. Right? I mean, because a lot of people are wrestling with this right now. We're seeing, like, you're right, we're seeing the great resignation and people. But hey, any piece of advice if somebody's watching this on either side of the fence?
Yeah, I'm trying to think a good answer. So
I can
just
give
like
you
it is never late. Yeah, just like it is never late to start something new. I read in the news yesterday that somebody who's 89 years old got a PhD in physics.
Wow.
89 years old, got a PhD in physics just yesterday, which is a remarkable thing. So just like it is never too late to start something, including a PhD program in your 80s, it is also never too early to quit. Now, a lot of managers are going to be very upset that I'm encouraging people to quit. That's not what I'm trying to say. You have to quit not just the job, but quit doing things that are not productive, that are not helpful. It could be quitting a vice that you have, we all, something like you're getting up too late in the morning to catch the bus. So maybe you quit waking up late. So you could reframe this whole quitting is really about having the courage to do the thing that you have to do and not be afraid of the consequences. If we spend too much time on planning and consequences, we spend very little time doing the action itself. And we just have to jump in, do it,
get stuck.
quit it.
Yeah, especially in this data-driven
And then the
world.
mind is clear after that.
That's right.
Now, obviously, there are financial consequences. You have family, you have, financial considerations around a lot of things when you do these kinds of things. So be sensible about it, but also not too timid, not too, don't work out of fear is my point. Mm-hmm. Be bold, be courageous. And by doing that, it will itself take you to the next level.
Well, that's my love language.
Sitting and doing armchair analysis is not going to help. You know what I mean? Just
I get what you mean. You're resting for 3 years whether or not you should quit. It's probably analyzed at that point. No, I totally get it. I guess I have one more question for you. Have you ever quit anything and regretted it? Did you ever quit something you said, you know what, I would do a do-over on that one? Anything of that nature?
Sure. I think that feeling happens during the time of that decision, in short memory. If you did something and something great happened, especially there is a mimetic desire around what just happened, something good happened in the place that you left, or something, I wish I had invested in that thing. For example, if you didn't get into crypto early on and you see, crypto market exploding, I wish I had done it, right? I wish. This is regret of not, but then you're going to live in the FOMO portion of it, fear of missing out, and then wanting to be in everything. So you really have to center yourself and say, it doesn't matter what happens. I've made this conscious decision to quit and move on. And this happens only later, not in the short term, right? So specific to your question, examples, you can give many. Quitting a relationship with someone that could have worked out better than your next relationship. That's often you go back and say, I wish I had, that, so on and so forth. So it's easy to think that way, but I think you're not in that time, and our brain does not have a full, real understanding, emotional understanding of the past as it has of the present. We have forgotten a lot. We don't remember a lot of things that happened last year, right? And the year before. So if you really transport yourself and remember, so one good advice I would give is journaling. And if you actually write down your feelings of exactly how you felt and the reasons you quit, all the rational and emotional reasons around it. I don't say irrational. They're still, you respect those reasons, put them as emotional and rational, and see why you made that decision. And later, if you ever have this quote unquote regret about that decision, you can go back and here is why I made those. Do you remember now why I did that? And I think you should then comfort yourself around it. Okay, well, that absolutely made sense at that time. I know I was dealing with a lot of that particular emotion or that particular reason. And so I was justified in doing that. Let's move on.
I love it. I love the idea of journaling as well. I'm a big time journaler, and I think as a journalist, and I think that captures the moment so beautifully. So